How's it going, everyone? Welcome to this week's Q&A. So like any other week, if you want a chance to one of your questions being answered, make sure you drop a comment down below and I'll either answer in that question itself or in a dedicated video or in a future video just like this. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question of the week. And it is, what can you expect, or what can you do at the time of a service, bringing your car into either a dealer or a repair facility? So just going to list a couple examples here. If you happen to have a noise inside the car specifically, do yourself a favor, do the technician a favor, the shop owner, and try to take out everything as much as possible from in the vehicle. First of all, you may isolate the noise yourself and find out a lot of times it's something that's actually in the vehicle. I've had certain things like as much as a simple water bottle just shifting back and forth causing a noise. And secondly, if we do have to go ahead and take out some stuff, interior panels, then we won't have to remove all that stuff out of the way, possibly get damaged, get broken, get lost, whatever the case may be. So secondly, if you have, let's say if you're doing a fuel pump recall, the fuel pump does have to come out of the vehicle at that point so we can replace the actual pump and the basket and the assembly. So do yourself a favor, don't bring in a vehicle with a full amount of gas, because A, it's going to spill over the place, possibly inside the vehicle, and obviously be overwhelming. Fuel could be very overwhelming, especially to some people. And B, you're going to lose that gas. We're not going to be able to save that gas for you and pour it back in the tank. It's just not really something we do. So just something to consider when bringing your cars into the service department. Also, if you have a check engine light, a noise, or anything like that, don't clear the check engine light. Don't take it to Joe's Auto Repair. Get it, the check engine light removed, and then come in with us, say, hey, I have this code. So a lot of times there is information attached to that code when the code is still stored in the ECU. So if you clear that, then that that valuable information is lost, and something that may have given us a clue or something like that is no longer there. So unless if the light comes back on immediately, I wouldn't go and clearing it or anything like that. You shouldn't be touching that stuff unless if you want to, of course. But don't come back to us with a light that was there, now it's not, then it's not really going to be helpful in most cases. And if you have a noise, just try to be as descriptive as possible. So as as detailed as possible information. If you have a noise going over bumps, in the morning, afternoon, while on a pitch, whatever the case may be, any of that stuff is extremely helpful to us. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so the next question is, this particular person is listening to the radio, key on, engine off, and after 15 minutes, the battery ended up dying. So a lot of times, especially as these batteries age, and more so if they're, in extreme cold and extreme heat, so they switch from back and forth. That tends to kill these batteries a lot. So if a battery lasts 3 to 5 years, it's probably time to begin a new one. I know some people will say, hey, I've had a battery for 8-9 years, has given me an issue. That's great. Reality is 3 to 5 years. On my personal vehicles, I go 4 years, I switch out the battery. Usually when they go at the absolute worst time, and I don't want to be caught out there somewhere with a dead battery. So on my car, I actually have a lithium battery, which are a lot better than your typical flooded AGM batteries and stuff like that. On the wife's Pilot, it's a 2019, I already changed the battery on it. Again, I don't want her to get stuck out there, and it usually happens at the worst possible time. So 15 minutes should be able to last a little bit longer, but consider this: if you have your fan, your AC button on, the fan's going to be cycling on. So a lot of different variables here. Just try to, whatever the case may be, try to have the car running if you're just hanging out there. Again, you don't want the battery dying because you're just listening to some music or a podcast or whatever the case may be. But yeah, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it's probably going to end up killing your battery, especially if you do this on a consistent basis. And it's probably going to be no issue other than you just having the key on, engine off for those 15-20 minutes. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, big brake kits. What is typically involved with these brake kits and, installing them and whatnot? So generally speaking, people install big brake kits because, they want a little bit extra bite, less brake fade and stuff of that nature. So most people won't be installing a big brake kit. Although on, for example, the TLXs, I have been doing a bunch of Type S brake swaps onto A-Specs and other models. The Type S brakes are bigger. than the other trims. So people do opt for those. They look better. They're a little bit lighter. A little bit better braking performance overall. So typically you'll have a larger rotor, right? You'll either have to change, remove, or trim your dust shield or backing plate, because a lot of times they'll cup over those rotors. So if you're installing a bigger rotor, larger diameter rotor, you're going to have to trim that, because if not, then you're going to have some rubbing and making tons of noises. Obviously, will come with a typically 4-6 piston caliper, sometimes more, but 4 to 6 is typically what we see out there. A lot of times these cars will come, or these kits will come with upgraded steel braided hoses versus just your normal rubber hoses that are typical to expansion within certain temperatures and conditions and stuff like that. So sometimes there will be some adaptive brackets for those calipers. So we're doing OEM to OEM here, from the base model to the Type S stuff. So the calipers fit onto the knuckles. Most times that's not the case. You're going to have some sort of a bracket to adapt to that aftermarket caliper, which is fine. Just make sure you use the same procedures, the proper procedures to install them, and just follow their recommendations or torque specs, Loctite if required and whatnot. But typically speaking, larger brake rotor, caliper, and a bracket, and some new brake hoses from the caliper to the brake line on the vehicle. So hopefully this is a question for you. All right, so the next question is intermittent extended crank on an '09 CRV. So this will apply to most vehicles and stuff you could check just yourself without taking it anywhere in most cases. You're going to want to test your battery. You can either do it at home if you have a tester, or take it to one of these parts stores, AutoZone, Napa, something like that. Usually they'll test the battery for you for free, because they want to sell you a new battery, which is fine. If you need one, it's probably the time to change it wherever you are. After that, you're going to want to test your battery terminals, and you're going to want to grab them and give them a nice twist like that. You shouldn't be able to move them at all. A lot of times I find tons and tons of loose terminals causing a no start, a slow start, intermittent no start, stuff like that. So typically that's the stuff we see. If all that checks out good, it could be that your starter is starting to go, causing excessive draw and cranking slowly. So a lot of times people say, hey, my battery is brand new, it's still cranking slow. Well, your starter is starting to go, and it's time to change it. A lot of times we see on these particular CRVs, the ignition switches, they do get burnt out over time, so it'll cause a buzzing or a slow crank, and very simple to do, and you could probably do yourself as well, but could be something on other vehicles that is faulty as well. Obviously, we are switching over to push start systems, but some of these cars still have a physical key for the ignition, so it's something you want to check. And lastly, you're going to want to make sure all your grounds are good, your cables are good, they're not frayed or anything like that. If anything is frayed, then obviously not the correct amperage and current is not going through these wires, and it could just be something as simple as that. Also, loose or dirty grounds and cables could have the same effect as a cable being 100 strands down to like 30 or something like that, which we do see breakdown with older vehicles. So hopefully it answers the question for you. Last but not least, question of the week. And again, if you want a chance of one of the questions being answered, make sure you do drop a comment down below. So the question is, are aftermarket upgraded intercoolers with bigger cores, bigger mass, worth the investment? So there's a lot of misconception that intercoolers are there to make as much power as possible. And that is true, although the job of the intercooler is to try to keep that power as consistent as possible. So a lot of times we will see, especially in hotter temperatures, the first couple runs of the vehicle, the car does great. After a couple runs, everything's heat soaked, and that intercooler stops losing its efficiency and causing it to lose power. So not only is it not making you power, the OEM intercooler oftentimes is causing you to lose power. So once I upgraded from my stock intercooler to the aftermarket intercooler on my vehicle, the car stays a lot more consistent, a lot more, and I can see on my intake temps that it helped decrease temperatures by a significant amount, but also helped to stay consistent for all my runs. So it'll increase a couple degrees, but nothing like before with my stock intercooler. So yes, I think it's definitely a nice, necessary mod in my opinion. even if the car is stock. If you like to push the vehicle, or if you live in an extremely high temperature area, definitely something I would consider on any turbo vehicle. But again, if you're modifying it and pushing it hard, absolutely, it's probably one of the first things I would do on any turbocharged vehicle. So hopefully it answers the question for you, and I'll catch everyone on the next one.